Mayor Eric Adams' corruption case was dismissed today by a judge with prejudice, and that means that the mayor cannot be retried on the same charges again. The mayor's attorney, Spiro, says that this case should have never been brought against the mayor in the first place. Our Alice Gaynor spoke with him on what this means moving forward.
Mr. Spiro, thank you for taking the time. So this is exactly what you and your client wanted, dismissed with prejudice. When you heard the news, what was the conversation like with Mayor Adams?
The mayor is relieved. We always knew that he would be vindicated and exonerated. We didn't know exactly how. You never know in these cases, especially cases that are politically charged, how it will entirely unfold. But I knew one day he would be cleared, either by jury, by judge, or with a government dismissal motion and an order. And here we are, and he's been cleared.
Had this been dismissed without prejudice, meaning it could have been brought again, was there this sense of a looming, a threat hanging over the mayor to comply with the Trump administration? There's this allegation of a quid pro quo.
I was never concerned about the concept of this hanging open. When you are defending people whose lives are on the line, you can't pick exactly how these things end. I may have wanted the Alec Baldwin trial to go all the way to a jury verdict. The fact that it was dismissed in the middle of the trial just is what it is. Here, this case shouldn't have been brought, and I'm not going to fight the government's correct decision to dismiss it. The reality is that the mayor is very strong. We've all seen this. We saw it when they came for him. We saw it with the leaks and the fake raid on Gracie Mansion and the little press conference. And he stood up, he stood strong, he didn't get forced out. He moved forward. And so I don't think in any way, shape, or form some vague threat or some concept that was frankly born a little bit in the media was going to impact him in any way. I was there days later when he was moving forward to sue the Trump administration. I know that some of his policies are very divergent from the president's. But ultimately, I'm not here to talk politics. I was here to make sure that this case that should have never been brought ended, so that New Yorkers can make their own choice about who they want to vote for and who's going to be the mayor of this great city.
Was there a quid pro quo? The former acting U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon said as much in her letter.
There was no quid pro quo, and she actually didn't say that. I don't know what she said. It was sort of convoluted because she knew she couldn't actually say that. The reality is that the meeting that has been referenced, tortured, and discussed, what I said was the mayor's innocent and he's going to be acquitted at trial. And if you want to go to trial and get embarrassed, you can do that, or you can find a more elegant way to exit stage left. The reality is, when they issued that memo, they were trying to protect the prosecutors from their own dumb case. They were trying to give them a soft landing, and then they had their internal fighting, which I have nothing to do with. But the reality is, the thing that really matters here is this case should have never been brought, and now it's over.
So you've called this case weak and baseless, and I am wondering why. The indictment's more than 50 pages. There was talk of a superseding indictment. You have prosecutors who would rather resign than drop the case. The DOJ was requesting the case be dismissed, not based on the merits of the case. So in the court of public opinion, you have a lot of people who say it seems to suggest there was a strong case against the mayor.
I don't know any serious lawyer. I don't know any ex-prosecutor or ex-judge who I speak to who thinks this was a strong case. Or a serious case. The allegations in this case were that more than a decade ago, when he was the Brooklyn bureau president, that because of a relationship he inherited regarding Turkish Airlines, he'd get some upgrades on planes, and then a decade plus later, he made a phone call for somebody. This is nonsense. It's silly. It's never a case that's been brought before in American history, and hopefully never a case that will be brought again. So when you have a case this thin and frankly this dumb, that is being brought like this, you have to ask yourself, do the equities, does taking out the sitting mayor of this important city, does it make sense to bring such a case in an election year? And of course it doesn't make sense, and most serious prosecutors would not have brought this case. And we now know that the prosecutor who did bring this case had political ambitions and political motives very, very much in his mind when he made that decision.
Well, in former acting U.S. Attorney Sassoon's memo to Attorney General Bondi, she said that his role in the investigation and oversight was minimal, and that this investigation actually began before he took office.
Yeah, an investigation can begin, they probe and investigate pretty much every political figure. So what? He ultimately makes the decision, and that office time and time again will say, well, the buck stops with the U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney makes the decision. The U.S. attorney signs the indictment. He made the call here, not anybody else.
And again, going back to what you said, you've called this the airline upgrade corruption case. What about the heavily discounted room at the St. Regis in Istanbul? What about the allegations of straw donors and the $10 million in matching public campaign funds?
You're asking me, will I call it the airline upgrade corruption case? First of its kind ever, and hopefully last. I do call it that. That's what this case is. And the retort from you in that question is, well, what about the discount in the St. Regis 8 years ago? Think about what we're talking about here. We're talking about the most complicated and important city to run in the world, and taking out the sitting mayor and putting him in prison potentially for the rest of his natural life over a discounted St. Regis hotel room 8 years ago, coupled with the airline upgrade corruption case. And when you start thinking about it, you got to ask yourself, is this what we should really be talking about? Is this what prosecutors should really be focused on? And if the answer to that is no, ask yourself what's really motivating them. And I'll tell you what, it's the headlines. It's all of this.
Well, what about the straw donors? Because we're talking about 10 million in allegations of 10 million in matching public campaign funds because of these straw donors, and also allegations of a Turkish official saying to the mayor, it's your turn to help Turkey, and then allegations that he pressured FDNY inspectors to open the Turkish consulate when they felt it wasn't safe to open.
There's a lot of questions bound up in that question, so let me try to deal with them. I think I've dealt with the 8-year-old discounted hotel room. To deal with did he pressure them to open the consulate? It turns out it wasn't even him that made the final call on that at all. And second of all, the message in question, the big smoking gun of this case, is a message that says, well, don't worry, basically. If you can't open it, don't worry, I'll just manage expectations. Turns out somebody completely different from the mayor, unrelated to the mayor, is who got that house opened. And that's one of the reasons, among many, he would have been acquitted in 30 minutes had this case gone to trial. As far as the tacked on straw donor allegation, and just understand something, they only tacked that on because there was a real chance that a court would throw out this bogus bribery theory, first of its kind, airline upgrade corruption theory. So they had to have something else to save face. So they add on this straw donor concept. And of course, as you know, every single major campaign has straw donors. Every major campaign does. You look at any presidential election, you can Google investigation into mayor so-and-so, you always see straw donors. The only question is, did the mayor direct it and was he aware of it? And the answer to that is no.
And you talk about a court would dismiss the bribery charges. You did file a motion to dismiss that and the judge denied it, correct, Judge Dale Ho?
The reason that they brought the straw donor add-on case was because they had such a thin bribery case. And because they had such a thin bribery case, they wanted to save face by having something still hanging out there if it happened that the bribery count got dismissed. So that is what it is. The reality is they could not have actually proceeded under that because the mayor did not direct that or have any knowledge of that. That is something that happens in every campaign. And the only question is, did the mayor direct it or know about it? And here he did not.
And Mr. Spiro, my final question, I know he had handed over that iPhone. Did he ever figure out the password for investigators?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The iPhone. Remember, he had handed over the iPhone and he couldn't remember. He had changed his password recently, couldn't remember, so they were in possession of this phone. And he had said
that's not what. Yeah, that's not accurate as to how this all played out. The reality is that through his phones, emails, subpoena compliance, cloud, storage, etc., the government for years poured over hundreds, thousands of messages, digging and digging, trying to find something, anything that they could pin on him. And the reality is the best they could come up with was a decade-old airline upgrade corruption case. And that's why, thankfully, this case is now over.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
When the news on the mayor broke this morning, we brought it to you on the air and also streaming online. We've shared the full order from the judge as well on our website. Find it all at cbsnewyork.com.